titled Transforming Healthcare with Human-Centered Design Thinking. And trust me, it's going to be packed with insights from two amazing ever care hospitals in Lahore and Medjack. We're going to dive into how human-centered design thinking (HCDT) has been applied to tackle key challenges in ICU and emergency departments, and how this innovative approach can reshape patient care and align with broader strategies. Just a bit of introduction. I'm Eamon and I have the pleasure of guiding us through this event today. Now, I'm not alone in this. Two fantastic experts will be leading the charge. First up, we have Dr. Sadnia, a thought leader in this space with a passion for innovative healthcare solutions. And joining him is Dr. Mehreen, who's been at the forefront of integrating design thinking into healthcare. Both bring a wealth of experience and excitement for today's topic. Now, before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Please make sure your mics are on mute unless you're speaking to keep things smooth. And we really want this session to be interactive, so drop your thoughts, questions, and comments into the chat throughout the session. And hey, don't be shy, just feel free to share your name and professional ties as a little icebreaker. We're all here to learn from each other. All right, that's all from me now. Let's get this ball rolling. Dr. Asad, the floor is all yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eamon, for getting us started. And that was done really well. Appreciate the comments and getting us all comfortable in this space, in this virtual space. Apologies to all that we've got to kind of go back to COVID time frame and then do this entirely virtually. But the beauty of digital learning and digital interactions is that you could be anywhere and everywhere, and we can have conversations, right? So what we really want, and Eamon mentioned some of the housekeeping stuff, and this really needs to be interactive, a very dynamic discussion based seminar, special seminar that we have the pleasure of hosting. And Marine, who will come next. She will take us through a very brief presentation. We've kept the presentation brief on purpose so that we spend much more time on the discussion. So if the content appears to be novel to you and you would like to learn more about it, please feel free to put your comments and your questions in the chat space, and Eamon will be moderating us, and then she'll also be quizzing us on some things as well as this conversation proceeds. My name, Eamon mentioned, my name is Asad Mia. I am an ER professional. Emergency medicine is my home base, clinical home base, and I have delved into innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship for almost a decade. And currently, I'm employed at by the Aga Khan University, and I do my clinical work in Karachi, in Pakistan. Pakistan is a low middle income country and similar to Nigeria. And I believe we will have people on this call from Nigeria and from Pakistan. And so very similar in their settings, in their economics. Both are low middle income countries, both have similar challenges, both have similar opportunities for growth, particularly from innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And so human-centered design thinking is something that we've been delving into for the past several years. And where Evercare is concerned, we've delved into HCDT for the past, I would say, this year or so. And we've had some really interesting outcomes, which Marine will take us through. And then the floor is going to be open to discussing the potential. Where can this be taken? What are future steps? What can be done? And what are the challenges of doing this kind of work? And what are the opportunities? So that's in a nutshell what we want to cover today. And that's it from me for now. And I have the great honor of welcoming Dr. Mehreen Sulaiman, who was formerly co-director of the Innovation and Incubation Hub that we were running at the Aga Khan University. And Mehreen is also an innovator and entrepreneur. She has experience in sleep medicine. Over to you, Mehreen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that warm welcome. I hope the session turns out to be interesting and educational, and hope everyone can learn a thing or two from the session. So taking forward what Asad just told us, we'll be talking a bit about our learnings from the workshops that were conducted for Lahore and Lakey Evercare hospitals. So let's begin the journey of transforming healthcare with human-centered design thinking. Right. So the objective for today's session, there are a couple, and I hope I'm able to cover them. We'll be exploring the transformative impact of human-centered design thinking on healthcare delivery at Evercare hospitals. Now, what we learned was 2 areas were highlighted where problems were identified and then solutions were proposed. For Lakey, it was emergency medicine, and for Lahore, it was ICU management. And we'll show you a bit of stats and our findings. We'll be showcasing how human-centered design thinking was applied to address complex challenges within these settings. And we'll also be giving you a brief overview of some data that we collected, reflecting satisfaction levels and how well the workshop was received by the participants. And eventually, we'll be talking about how this innovative approach can transform patient care and can be integrated with Evercare's broader strategies. A quick overview of the workshops. These workshops were conducted for 2 days in each city, spanning over 5 hours per day. These workshops were conducted by Dr. Asid Mia. There were 60 participants in Lakey and 45 participants in Lahore. Within the population, over 70% of the participants were clinicians, and the others were non-clinicians from various administrative and supporting roles. 5 teams presented in Lahore and 5 teams presented in Lakey. Before I take you into what happened at the actual workshop, I would like to talk a bit about the process of human-centered design thinking. You'll keep on hearing us talk a lot about HCDT, human-centered design thinking. This is a 5-step approach. And as you can see, I'll talk about all these 5 pillars in just a bit. It's a novel approach which addresses complex challenges or problems that exist within the healthcare environments and organizations. And then it fosters an empathy-driven and, it ensures that innovative solutions are formed as a result of this 5-step process. Participants are divided into teams and they begin their journey by empathizing, which essentially means discussing, understanding what the problem is. Then they move on to defining the problem, in which we call as the problem statement. In few solid words, you define what the problem is. We then take them through an ideation phase, which consists of divergent and convergent thinking, whereby they brainstorm and they mind map and they doodle whatever ideas come to their mind. Then they sieve through and converge onto the best possible idea that can be prototyped. And further, if time permits, it's tested. So this is a brief overview of how these workshops were conducted. They were divided into different steps. It began with introduction, then the 5 steps were discussed, then the participants were taught how to empathize. We do have a cheat sheet for empathizing. For people who don't know how to empathize, we teach that too. Then they move on to problem identification, and then ideation, prototyping, and testing if time permits. Also, if there are any questions, please feel free to pause me or put them in the chat space provided. So here's what the workshops in Lakey look like. And why we're showing these to you is because they were different from other seminars or workshops or trainings. These were super interactive. Participants were given time to mingle around, time to form teams, time to move around and, just stretch too. And we'll show that to you as well in a bit. And here are some of the pitch presentations. So these are the teams that presented in Lahore. In the second part of this seminar, Dr. Asid will be discussing a few examples that came out as a result of this workshop and that Evercare would be working on. So what did we learn from these workshops? In a nutshell, few problems and pain points were highlighted in Lakey. There was a referral system inefficiency and emergency response delays that were identified, which further led to proposed solutions like creation of a referral coordinator role and enhanced communication protocols. So as you can see, problems were identified in different cities, in different hospitals, and then solutions were also proposed. In Lahore, ICU triage and communication delays were identified, which led to solutions like better triage protocols and empathy training for staff. Moving on to the bit where we gather data in a post-event evaluations based on a 5-point Likert scale. Just a brief overview. What we saw in the two cities was that majority of the population that participated in the workshops was in the age limit of 31 to 40. And then it varied. In Lekhi, there was 21% in which were in the age group of 41 to 50. And in Lahore, 34.4% in the age group of 21 to 30. Gender distribution was more or less equal. Now, these graphs show, and I would like to take a moment to thank Hira Imran if she's here with us. She was responsible for data collection and analyzing the data for us. Now, here you can see what we did was divided the data into two broad categories, educational value and logistical factors. The data you see above, the bar graph you see above, is from Lahore. As you can see on the left-hand side for educational value, questions like if they felt inspired, if they felt problems proposed by the teams were relevant and important, if the solutions and ideas were relevant, if the participants felt that it was a healthy mix of people from different fields, and if the participants felt this workshop increased their knowledge of workplace problems and solution. So these were the questions that we asked in the educational bit. And as you can see, the data for Lahore for the graph on the left is more or less between 4 or 5, agree and strongly agree. Now moving on to the data set presented in the graph on the right-hand side, which consists of logistical factors. Questions that were asked in this was about adequate time allotment, about the workshops being relaxed, non-stressful, fun, if they were to recommend these workshops to future participants. So as you can see in the data set provided, in the graph provided on the right-hand side, the data is, ranging from 3, 4, 5, which is some were unsure, some agreed, and then the rest strongly agreed. Now moving on to the data we gathered from Lekhi. What I would like, or what was rather interesting for us was, as you can see, the responses we gathered on the left-hand side for educational value were more or less similar in Lahore and Lekhi, ranging from 4 or 5 on the Likert scale. And if we see the graphs on the right-hand side, the responses were similar to what we gathered from the participants in Lahore and Lekhi. Overall, over 85% of the participants rated this as high or very high in terms of educational value, logistical factors, and if they were to recommend this workshop to future participants. A few suggestions that we gathered for improvement of these workshops. One common theme was to increase the duration and frequency of these workshops. Participants wanted more of these workshops to happen at Evercare. Then few of them suggested that they would like to learn testing strategies in detail. Once they're done with prototyping, they would want to move on to the testing phase. A few wanted us to share tools, materials, recommend books that would help them further understand the process and create an awareness around HCDT program. And then few participants wanted us to share examples or case studies of work problems that have already been identified through HCDT with potential solutions. Now moving on to future directions. What you saw was the data that came out of the workshop, and these are our proposed strategies for future. Why must Evercare have more of these workshops? A, because it takes ideas from ideas to implementation and growth. B, for an actionable plan for turning innovative ideas from these workshops into effective policies and profitable business ventures, demonstrating Evercare's values, a commitment to innovation, quality, and financial growth. What you see on the screen are potential incentives for Evercare to host, like I said, these workshops at a regular, on a regular basis. Number one, it increases the quality of care. By having these workshops, challenges are identified that occur in the hospital by the employees of Evercare. Who better to identify a problem than the people who are actually working in the environment? Problems like in the critical areas like ICU were brought forward, in emergency medicine were brought forward. And HCDT can actually increase or lead to improved patient outcomes, which could eventually reduce complication rates if those issues in the ICU management of patient care are taken into account, could reduce readmissions and thereby increasing patient throughput and efficiency. Increased patient satisfaction. Of course, once proper care is administered, proper strategies are put into place, this would eventually all tie into increased patient satisfaction. Innovation and service diversification. New services can be introduced as strategies or policies through the ideas that are generated through the HCDT workshops. This can lead to enhancement of existing services and, like I said, introduction of new services, opening up additional revenue streams. Market differentiation. Once Evercare starts introducing or starts having these workshops on a regular basis, Evercare can differentiate itself in competitive markets, attracting more patients and partnerships. Staff engagement and retention. By empowering the staff through these workshops and by training them in different tools for problem identification and problem solving, this has actually proven to increase job satisfaction and reduce turnover, which eventually will save costs related to hiring and training new employees and leading to more experienced and engaged staff. Moving on, we'll start with skill development. Of course, happy employees with new skills, new experiences, enhanced competencies in critical thinking, collaboration, and innovation. These are skills that were taught as a part of, or they identified them as a part of these workshops. Proactive risk management. Through these workshops, the employees or the participants attending them who are based within the Evercare system will be able to identify existing risks and how can they be mitigated and how can better policies or better strategies be put into play, reducing overall risk and eventually financial losses for the company. Scalability and expansion. The ideas that come through these, from these workshops can be scaled, can be expanded, can be implemented in different areas or different departments and also different geographical locations that Evercare hospitals are based in. Eventually, all of this leading to attracting investments. Evercare can focus or leverage the outcomes of these workshops to enhance patient care and also drive substantial financial growth, aligning operational improvements with strategic business objectives, which ties into monetization models. These workshops can further be replicated at other venues. They can further be opened up to participants from outside of Evercare and can be monetized, further leading to partnerships and direct service offerings. Overall call to action. Engagement opportunities, inviting stakeholders to participate in the incubation process, which is step number 2. After we're done with these workshops, the ideas that come through it have the potential to be incubated and then improved and then further be utilized as strategies, products that are developed by the participants, offering input and resources. Continuous improvement. Emphasize the importance of ongoing feedback and iterative development to refine and enhance policies and business models and eventually financial growth through these workshops. Thank you. That is all from me. Asad, would you like to share the case study from Lahore?
Yeah, sure. We can take down the presentation if you want. I don't have any slides, and thank you very much, Dr. Marine. That was very well presented, and I learned a lot. I hadn't seen all the slides before, but the slides and the potential, the incentive slides are actually so insightful, because I think you've kind of done a good deep dive into that as to where this can be taken. And I very briefly will tell you about one of the projects from Lahore. In fact, if I have my Lahore colleagues online, I would love for somebody from Lahore to actually tell us what their experience has been over the past few weeks that they've delved into um, the humanizing ICU startup initiative, which is called Empathion. And so, if I don't know, I don't want to pick on anybody's names, but Sadia, if you want to, or if Danish is here, Zair, anybody, just a quick, just share your thoughts.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Asad, and very insightful presentation indeed by Mehreen. So, yes, I would like to add because this workshop
Please.
project has
No,
actually.
I don't.
No. Can somebody please mute your mic, Sarah? Please mute your mic. Okay. So this has helped us a lot. And as you have seen the transformative journey yourself, since we've been meeting on weekly basis. So initially, I'd just like to give you an overview, give all of you an overview of the project. So it's basically humanizing the ICU. And by humanizing, we meant to say that there needed to be some empathy and some effective communication within the staff, as well as among themselves, as well as with the patients, with the attendants. So during the workshops, there was a group which was called Empathy Listeners, as we just saw. So while we were going through all of this journey, we came up with a problem that in the ICU of Evercare Hospital Lahore, there is a serious communication gap among the staff and all the among the staff, with the patients, with the attendants, specifically since ICU is a very critical care area. So the patients and the attendants, they need some special type of counseling. The staff also needs to be very vigilant with regards to their communication. So that was a huge gap that was identified. So what we did was we brainstormed, we sat with the team. We also took on board some some of the ICU consultants, all the stakeholders that were involved within the ICU as a department. So we also listened to them, since the very first step of HCDT is empathy. So we tried to understand what actually the problem is, not only from the perspective of the patients and the attendants, but also from the staff themselves, the doctors, the nurses. So they also came up with some of the issues that they were facing. So what we did was, the first step we did is we formulated a questionnaire, a survey questionnaire, which not only talked about the communication gaps, but also about the staff well-being, how well they are being treated, how well they are feeling within the ICU as a staff. Are they burnt out or not? Or there are some other issues, some psychological issues. So we're trying to understand what the staff is feeling as well. So we've circulated the questionnaire. We are getting some responses. Initially, the response rate was very low, but now there has been some pace within the responses, and we are getting good responses with some very beneficial suggestions and comments as well. Then what we did is we did an ice-breaking activity for a specific group. So that was also something that that sparked something within the staff. They got encouraged. They were excited that this is something happening within our department. So what we did was, there was a very small ice-breaking activity, and they got to know each other well. Then there was a second session that we did this week. And this session was, this was much improved than the previous one, because the staff was very looking forward to that. And we identified during the session that some of the staff did not even know themselves. they did not know who is the security guard. So this is not what they felt was the ICU staff is the nursing staff actually. So we told them that this is a whole team. This is a team building activity. So we need to ensure that you all know each other very well to fill that communication gap. So that's what the takeaway message for them. And then what we did was at the end of the session, we just did a small team building activity, which the staff really enjoyed. And they also shared their concerns and issues. And we also reinforced the questionnaire that we circulated, that you have to respond to that, and that is for your own good. So that's what's happening. Then what we are trying to do is we'll take some measures for the staff well-being. Like we can have some counseling sessions for the staff. We can have some as we are doing right now. We're doing some sessions for them, and then some other measures as well for the staff. Like if we can see that if there is some issue in the roster management, so not only the sessions, we are also looking at the other operational issues as well. So another thing that we are doing, that's from the staff perspective. From the patients and attendants experience perspective, we are looking at the things like, is there a counseling area for the attendants, or the for their proper counseling, since they are very naive and they're very emotionally they're very emotionally charged at that point. So we are looking at that. We are also making sure that the look and feel of their waiting area is okay. And the communication, we are also conducting the communication sessions, effective communication sessions, how they are going to be counseled, not only from the MOs, medical officers, and but also from, so everybody is on board, the consultants as well. So that's what we are doing. So we are in a process of just seeing how it's going, and it's so far it's going really well. So we'll look at the statistics, and now that we've started getting the responses, so we can have a good data to analyze and take some more interventions regarding that.
Thank you so much, Sadia. That was excellent. The narrative that you've shared kind of really, I think, takes home or brings home the point that where Mehreen kind of left off in her presentation, that she focused on the actual teaching learning opportunity, the satisfaction levels of the learners, and so on and so forth. What you have demonstrated, Sadia, is that if there's enough commitment, then uh, team building can continue, and it can actually be taken through, progressed forwards from the prototyping to the testing to the iterations, and that's what the beauty of this HCDT process is, right? So what we do implementation wise during a 2-day, 3-day, 5-day workshop is really getting people excited about these things, and then taking it forwards is really dependent on the entity, on the department, on the leadership, as well as on the people on the ground, right? So hopefully the other thing that Marine hasn't mentioned, but Marine and Hira, the fourth year student, they're working on writing up this for a publication in a biomedical journal. And similarly, what comes out of Lahore for Empathion, or this humanizing ICU, that can also be published. So because it's data driven, these are very publishable, and in medicine, having evidence of this kind definitely benefits not just Evercare, but also um, partners of Evercare and people outside of Evercare as well. So I'm just going to pause over here, and Eamon, you can moderate us. There are some questions and comments perhaps coming up.
For sure. So just a bit of, re-energizing throughout the session. I have a few questions for all of us who are there in the session. Let's make this even more interactive with a quick round of questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and you just have to type your answers in the chat box. It's super easy, like just one or two in numbers. whatever your option is in relevance to the question. Okay, so I hope everyone is ready. I will also be putting in the questions in the chat box just for the relevance. Okay, so here goes the first question. How likely are you to utilize human-centered design thinking in your work streams? Which is option number 1, very likely or very unlikely. Please put this, given your opinion. Okay, so we are getting the responses in the chat box, and most up till now, everybody has agreed with that. Very likely, indeed, human-centered design thinking is a very utilizable skill, and it has to be implemented. I believe it's not just in just a certain field, or its applications are huge in wide aspects. Lovely.
Sorry,
So
ma.
everybody.
Hello, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, I can see them.
Okay. Okay, sir. Welcome, sir. Thank you. I did a procedure this afternoon, about,
Okay.
and I don't know how it
Please
went.
mute your mics. Excuse me.
Sir?
Just mute your mics, please, everyone.
This is a procedure. Yes,
Your
Yes,
video.
please.
ENT,
Your result? No, this is not your video.
Felix, and ENT Odogwu. If you could just mute your mics, folks. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay, doctor will talk to you now.
Actually, I'm not getting the option to muting them.
She's
Let me
I mean,
just
we are
get
not
this
giving you
done.
the result now, but she's going to talk to you about your findings. Your result will be ready
Vincent,
in 3 to 5 days.
Vincent and Felix, can you please mute your mics?
Sent me on my marriage, even sent me doing well now. Him and his wife, they don't
Okay.
rent house.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
That
Okay,
was-
thank you.
Yes. So we are on to the next question that we have. Okay, so here comes the next question. Do you think HCDT can improve patient outcomes in your department, whatever that could be? It could be either ICU, emergency departments, or in any department of the healthcare that you actually belong to. And as I said, it really has got wide applications for that. So here comes the second question that's asked. Absolutely or not really? Okay, so we have responses. Absolutely. We do have improved patient outcomes because of HCDT. Lovely to have all your opinions. Just a minute more to get more responses. Sadia says absolutely. Thank you, Sadia, for your insightful opinion. Okay. Okay, so here comes the next third question, which says that how confident are you in applying the strategies you're learning today, which is in terms of application of HCDT or HCDT itself, if that concept is very new to you. Are you very confident in applying the strategies or not confident? Okay, so Vikas, if you'd like to share why that opinion of yours, like, is there any elaboration to it? It will be really helpful for us to actually navigate through it.
Yes. Yes. Hello, I'm Makas, and hello, Eamon. So
Hi.
I always believe that there's more to learn. So obviously, with more practice and more projects, I think I'll be more confident. in each project there's some shortcomings. And in fact, I had a question for Ms. Sadia as well. Ms. Sadia very thoroughly described the whole ICU process, and it was really nice. I'm glad it all worked out. Ms. Sadia, you mentioned that there was an issue with the low response rates initially within the ICU case that you presented earlier. So, how do you tackle that issue? How do you tackle that roadblock? I believe everyone has sort of experienced this roadblock where there's a low response rate. So, I I think you mentioned icebreaker activities, but can you elaborate? Because I'm sure everyone can sort of learn from how do you learn from your experience, and how do you deal with the low response rates, and how do you solve that? If you
Thank
or if anyone has, yeah.
Thanks, Vikas, and I think anyone else also can chip in. So, I'd just like to tell you about the recent session. It happened a couple of days ago. So, while we were interacting with the staff as a management team, as a quality representative, we also have a patient experience representative within our team. So we were talking to them, we were connecting with them, and they were very open to share their thoughts with us. So one of the team members, he was like, whatever we are recording, or whatever you are getting, the responses from us, are they confidential? Are they anonymous? So I think that's the main thing that's in the minds of the staff. So they need to be reassured that whatever you are sharing with us, that's a very confidential thing, and it's just for the betterment of yourself as well as your team as well. So that's something that we need to ensure, because that survey is very it's like it's talking about their own well-being, how well you're being treated, what are the gaps that you're facing within the communication. Is there a handover problem? Is there a senior or junior level problem? So we are trying to identify all those issues within the team, but in a very in a very safe environment, in a very a protected manner. So that's what they are being assured, and now we are getting more responses. So I think that's something that's positive out of that. And we are making sure that we continue to communicate with them, we continue to connect with them, so that they feel they feel acknowledged, they feel understood. So that's what number one, that's what we are focusing on at priority at the moment. And I think it's producing good results.
Thank you. That explains a lot of things. And yes, that is a question that gets asked about anonymity. So yes, that's a good tactic to have.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Sadi, for addressing the question. Meanwhile, we just received another question from one of the tenants. Mr. Usman asks that how would HCDT be incorporated in tandem palliative care? Dr. Asad, Dr. Marine, anybody who's like free to answer that for us?
Yeah, I can attempt. So my understanding of the question is, in tandem with palliative care, is that what you intended, Mr. Usman, Dr. Usman? It says, how would HCDT be incorporated in tandem with palliative care? If that is the question, then yeah, so I think from our experience, or from my experience of HCDT, and Marine can also offer her insight on this. Because the steps, the 5-step process that we follow, we've kind of learned from Stanford's D School or Design School. And so that HCDT 5-step process is pretty generic, right? So it doesn't matter what the target area is. It could be emergency medicine, ED, because I'm an ED physician, so I'm naturally I've kind of delved into this several times from the ED perspective, and then with Evercare ICUs give me another learning opportunity. So it could be done for palliative care, it could be done for pediatrics, it could be done for even your administrative departments as well, which might not be patient facing. It could be just admins, it could be IT, it could be human resource, doesn't matter, because it depends on who your target audience is. And so if there, for example, if in palliative care, right, I can use this as an example. So if you want to design or use design thinking for palliative care, then if your clients, quote unquote, are patients who are terminal, who have chronic illness, and oncology patients, could be children and adults, then definite potential to learn the process of HCDT, because it starts off with empathy. So as Sadia also mentioned, she was also, and their team was also demonstrating empathy. And the design thinking workshops start off with empathy, right? So your empathy demonstration or implementation never ends, actually. It keeps happening. And so where palliative care is concerned, you could definitely include your patients requiring or getting palliative care, and you could get them into focus group discussions or FGDs. You could have a short survey like the kind Sadia and team created. And they could be the questions could be very relevant to palliative care, and that could be the starting point for you to build further as to what you want to do, which would be a very humane process for patients who are needing to be taken care of at home and who are terminal. I don't like the word terminal, but people that that they need to be home, and the most one should do is a peaceful dying and death process, and which we are not trained in as physicians and nurses. I believe we do not have the training. So I think palliative care could be a great opportunity to implement HCDT. I hope that somewhat addresses your question.
Thank you, Dr. Asad. I hope, Usman, the question has been addressed. If there's any more queries, yes, he says, thank you, Dr. Asad. Okay, so we have another question line. Mr. Uzair asked that, can HCDT be used in quality projects as well? So anybody in the panel would like to answer that?
Marian, you want to? And then I can add.
Sure. So, like Asit said, the beauty of HCDT is your target group doesn't really matter. It is sector agnostic. Your client or the person suffering or the person experiencing that problem could be anyone. So yes, for quality projects, 100%. And what better than to understand the problem from people experiencing it? They would be the best people to identify or to tell you about the gaps that exist. Once you empathize with them, that'll give you a better understanding of the problems that they're facing, eventually leading you to improve or come up with solutions that would, improve or bridge those gaps, or come up with solutions that will make the situation better. So yes, I think 100% it can be used for quality projects. So would you like to chime in?
Yeah, because this is a great question. Thank you for that question, Uzair. So I'm thinking, why not just give an example of what was done at Evercare, okay? And the colleagues from Lekki are here. So when I was there in June, Marian, as you're aware, and Vakas and some of my other co-conspirators in Create to Innovate, that the workshop that we did was HCDT based, but rather than using a very clinically oriented problem solving, we used this storytelling approach. And so the stories that have come out of this HCDT and Create to Innovate process in June from Lekki, those stories have huge potential to be translated into other languages and be utilized for quality initiatives, patient safety, patient quality, for example, in pediatrics and family medicine. So children, those stories are intended for children, right? Small children. And so when you translate them into different languages, then stories that have generated that have come out of Nigeria can be a great gift to children of Pakistan, because you can translate them into Urdu. So you can have Urdu English, you can have Nigerian dialects, Yoruba or whatever dialects that are spoken there, and you can actually contextualize this to your specific setting whether it's Nigeria or it's Nairobi or it's Pakistan or it's India, it's Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, doesn't matter. We have utilized these approaches in the past by translating stories into different languages and using them as health literacy tools. And so JCI is a great example as well, that JCI requires you to, one of the mandates of JCI is family and patient's attendance and health literacy. Okay, so teaching them, counseling them. So these stories could definitely be utilized as a quality initiative, and they've come out of HCDT. So I hope that addresses the question. And some really interesting questions and comments are coming up.
Yeah.
Over
Thank you,
to
Dr.
Eamon.
Asad. Thank you, Dr. Asad, for such an insightful and explanatory answer. It certainly makes us relevant to how HCDT can be applied in different aspects. Okay, so we have another question in line by John here. He says that, do you think the problem of nurses shortage could be addressed through HCDT?
Well, yes, okay, so HCDT, I think, is a beautiful approach for complex problems. Okay, problems that are very 21st century. And if people are familiar with the acronym or abbreviation VUCA, VUCA, volatile, unpredictable, chaotic, ambiguous, that defines the 21st century. So nursing shortages could be a VUCA problem as well, Jahangir, if you agree with me, or even if you disagree with me. But I think a lot of these complex issues can certainly be attempted to be dissected. Now, whether you will have a cookie cutter approach, or, it's not going to be one size fits all, but definitely during the empathy and problem identification and problem definition stages, the first two parts of HCDT that Marine showed you, that first figure, you can start understanding the gravity or the granularity of the problem itself. And nursing shortages are inherent in Pakistan, in Nigeria, in the US, the world over. Okay, so it's not something unique to LMICs. It's a global phenomenon, especially with COVID and post-COVID scenarios. Okay, so why not? And I could also suggest that, why not have a hackathon around nursing shortages, right? Because a hackathon is essentially a design thinking sprint. It's a longer version and a lot more fun, where we get you to move as well. So that would be my quick answer. Well, quick was kind of longish. Marine, you want to add?
No, I think you've done a good job at answering that question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asad, and thank you, Jahangir. I hope your question was addressed. Next, we have a bit long question by Nasik. He asked that we are attempting to implement management design business principles to healthcare. Has anyone thought of doing the reverse, applying healthcare principles, heuristics, etc., in other fields? I'm sure a lot of the core principles of EM, such as ABCDE, triage, golden hour, etc., could be implemented in other fields. It would be interesting to explore. So it's a bit of a kind of comment as well.
It's a great question, Nasik, and I so and I think it's a great opportunity. I don't know. Okay, so design thinking did not originate from healthcare, by the way, right? So design thinking has been around for decades, but it's in the realm of designers, IT people, programmers, I guess people who design things, products, and graphic designers is just, and engineers, for example, right? So healthcare adopted and then further adapted human-centered design thinking, in my opinion. And we've kind of been further adapting it and modifying it and modulating it based on our needs, whether it's Lahore based or Nigeria based or Karachi based, and so I think that definitely, I mean, so from another field, healthcare can adopt things, and why not from healthcare to other fields, right? So and I can't think of an example right now, but triage, um, well, maybe reflective practice, because that is something that I did a workshop on in Lahore and also in Lekki. and that is originated from the emergency department, by the way. So that reflective practice is specifically put together for emergency department healthcare folks, physicians and nurses or others, and then it's been taken non-healthcare people as well, because it's just a way of kind of reflecting on what you've done and can you what have you learned from it, and how you can do things differently or better in the future, right? So triage in the emergency department is a great area to learn about these things where your personal life is concerned. And you can use heuristics, and you've mentioned heuristics, and that's a great point as well. Heuristics could be utilized from emergency medicine to non-EM fields, and I do it all the time. And I think you could write about this as well, Nasik, if you're interested, how this could be done. And ABCD is the primary assessment, and yeah, why not? It could certainly be adapted and adopted. And if I were to do something like this, then I would probably use my great friend GPT 4.0 or GPT to help me out here. Okay, back to Eamon.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Asad. Again, that was very insightful. So we have another question lined up by Aida. I hope I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. So the question is, are you aware of any hospital real-life project where HCDT has been used to achieve adoption of hospital-wide quality culture by a critical mass of the hospital?
And Dr. Ayo, this is such a great question. And so yes, there is literature. Okay, so HCDT has been utilized in the US, in the West, and that's where we've kind of come across examples of healthcare within the healthcare system. So emergency departments is an area, and healthcare administration is another area. And we can certainly pull up the references, because we're working on publishing our data from Lahore and Lekki, and we've pulled up several references for HCDT, and we are happy to share it with you. So I cannot answer whether it was used as whether critical mass was reached or not, but certainly from one department, it did trickle out into other departments. That has happened. And then I think people have been doing this without necessarily calling it HCDT. PDSS cycle, for example, and a lot of people in healthcare are very familiar, and people in safety and quality are very familiar with PDSS cycles. It's actually not that different from HCDT. The prototyping, testing, and iterative cycles is essentially PDSS cycles. Yes, you get your background first, and you figure out, okay, what is the data, what's your what's your baseline, and then you start planning your strategy, and then doing it, then studying it, then acting upon it, and so on and so forth. So I think you could perhaps you probably, and people in hospitals have probably done this without realizing that it's along that spectrum of design thinking. But now, because we've learned about it so much, I think we are overtly and explicitly making the case for the utilization of HCDT in our healthcare setups. I hope that kind of addresses your query, but happy to share references.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Asad. Again, we have a comment, and rather, I'd actually, appreciate this comment by Zunera. She says that as a biomedical engineer, the HCDT framework has been essential in my work, guiding everything from consumer experience mapping to feasibility analysis. It ensures that product design and development stay user-focused, results in more innovative practical solutions. And I would really like to commend this, that this is actually the case even in the aspect of engineering, and not just biomedical engineering. Again, HCDT has wide applications wherever you want to implement. It's just the idea of the human-centered approach that has to be applicated wherever you are, and wherever you think it's feasible to find a solution for a certain problem. Again, do we have any other questions? Okay. So Vakas actually puts in a comment. He says that in reference to HTT governance, he mentions that the
Yes.
application of human-centered design. Acha, okay.
No, so it's
he has
basically a
shared.
reference.
Yeah, it's a
so
reference that he has
It's
shared.
actually it's
Great.
actually a narrative review that Dr. Asania has also mentioned, and it's been used. This in this paper, they've talked about how they've used HCDT in neonatal in Kaiser Permanente in different hospitals around the world, and they've developed different solutions for different situations. I believe they've talked about how they developed a sort of device in the gynecology department, and how they've also mentioned nurse shortage that they've addressed in Kaiser Permanente Hospital. So it's a whole narrative review. It's a big article, but yes, you can find a lot of references for HCDT in used in hospitals in this newspaper. Thank you, Eamon.
Thank you, Vakar, for sharing that great piece with us. We have Fiza's question in the chat box. She mentions that how can you defend that a psychologist collaborate with designers to create ACDT programs that prioritize emotional intelligence, empathy, and user well-being? And what role can psychology play in informing design decisions that promote positive behavioral change and user experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for the question, Fiza. And if I understand that right, so you're saying, well, the question is how can you defend that psychologists collaborate? So actually, I think it's a great thing that psychologists, behavioral psychologists, or environmental, or people, organizational psychologists, I guess, right? So people who can comment on spaces, right? So healthcare design, for example, the colors that we use, or light, and so on and so forth, right? For pediatrics, for example, making the space very child-centric. So having psychologists, clinical psychologists, child psychologists, and so on, as part of the design process is a great idea, and it's really beneficial. It informs the design process, and you mentioned user experience, which is UX. So UI UX, very frequently used phrases. User interface is UI, and user experience is UX. So all of us kind of like should become pretty knowledgeable about this from the empathy lens, because when we are talking to our potential clients, and I'm using clients very broadly, very generically, they could be patients, they could be staff, they could be students, they could be faculty, they could be all of the above, none of the above. So so in a multidisciplinary team, that's called a multidisciplinary approach, where you have a psychologist, you have your clinician, you have your nurse, you have your IT design person, and so on and so forth. There could be students, there could be there could be your artists as well. So we've done these things through hackathons, and I give the example of hackathons again, and we've actually come across these kinds of examples, how this prioritizes or informs emotional intelligence, user well-being, so on and so forth. Great question, and I hope I've been able to kind of like convince you that all these folks are needed for a team-based approach, if that was the question.
Yes, Fiza, please to help us know if your question was answered. Okay, so yeah, sure.
Yeah, no. So I was just saying that what Dr. Asadmia just mentioned in response to Fatma's question, I know a couple of friends who majored in psychology, and they also studied neuropsychology, which is basically they studied how different colors stimulate different centers in our brain, and it sort of creates a peaceful environment in the brain, and it grasps attention of the users. And then they've utilized it, and they're now brilliant web designers, graphic designers, and they create UI UX experiences for different companies. So I think it's a multidisciplinary approach, as Dr. Asad mentioned, and yes, psychologists I do think that they're very powerful because they've understood the brain, and so they sort of can curate whatever they want to grasp, and they can create like good experiences for people. So yes, for sure, I think ACDT can play a part, as Dr. Asad mentioned.
Thank you, Vikas, for that. If you would allow, Dr. Marine, I just give us another question, another shot, the last one, I guess, and then you can just get along with the conversation. Okay, so the last question for the session today, and I think that's very essential one. Would you like more training or workshops on HCTT in future? If your opinion is yes, please do type 1, and if not necessary, then do type 2. And it's coming in your chat box. Please do respond. Further, if anybody would like to elaborate on how the session should be done, like any other comments, suggestions, please feel free to chime in. Okay, so there's a huge demand for HCTT sessions.
The next question would always be, would you pay for? Because we are innovators and entrepreneurs. We don't do these things for free. And if you want quality work, then and I'm also making a pitch for our startup that we've been working on. Shh. Yes, thank you, Jahangir, for agreeing to pay for this. Excellent. I mean, I just wanted to take a minute or less to thank everyone, and then back to Eamon. But I'm really do appreciate um, uh, people attending this, and we're kind of overwhelmed, and I'm overwhelmed with the number of people who've attended this, and we'd be happy to kind of talk about this topic or similar topics and so on and so forth. Yeah, and you know where to get hold of us, and back to Eamon.
Okay, so any messages, any comments, they can be messaged by of me, anything you would like to share?
I think the session went really well. I was really impressed by the kind of questions that people asked and their curiosity to learn more about the process of human-centered design thinking. So that was interesting and that was good to know.
Certainly, I was even impressed by the amount of interaction that we had in this session, and it's really like it just ensures us that this is the kind of content that people are actually looking for, and HCET do has applications, and that people have started to absorb this kind of phenomena in their daily life roles and professional roles. So thank you all for your engagement and enthusiasm today. We have had an enlightening discussion on how HCDT can revolutionize healthcare, especially in critical areas like ICUs, emergency departments. Dr. Sir, Dr. Marine have offered invaluable insights that we hope will inspire and inform your own work. Just a takeaway message as a goodbye. Remember that at the heart of transformative healthcare is a deep understanding of the human experience. By putting patients and caregivers at the center of our design process, we can create solutions that truly make a difference. Considering that as an end note, this whole session will be available to you on our YouTube channel with the name of Medjack Webinars, and certainly we can afford another session next time. So until then, goodbye.